Thanks for joining us for our session today, You Suck, Prevent and Address Negative Customer Feedback. So in today's session, what we're going to be talking about are some examples of some stories of what occurred online. Many of you have probably seen some of these stories, and some of the responses that people have had where there's been negative trends or negative comments that are being posted on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and how the companies reacted to them, whether good or bad. And our panel will be talking about what they would have done and gave recommendations. If any of you have some examples you want us to pull up and give our advice, we're more than willing to pull those up as well. So if you can think of any examples, we'll take a look at them coming up. So to introduce our panel, I'll let each one introduce themselves. So JT.
Hey everybody, so I'm JT. I run a software development company, and I've been in the affiliate and marketing world for the last 10 years or so. I've basically done a lot of the social for a lot of the companies that I've built over the years. And we've had our fair share of issues and wins as well, so that's me.
My name's Nate Smith. I have a few niche affiliate sites, most notably is coffeenate.com, and through the growth of my site on social platforms, people started asking advice all the time, so I started charging for it, and now I'm an outsourced solution for online marketing management.
Hi, I'm Steinmarc. Been involved in the digital marketing space for quite a while with a focus on social media, gamification, and general marketing and business strategies. My main focus is right now I'm involved with a few startups, helping them develop their strategies and marketing efforts.
Okay, and my name is Bhavik Modi, and I'm a Six Sigma black belt focusing in on process improvement, but I'm also a part-time affiliate, and I've been doing that now for about 5 years or so. So additionally, what we have is a hashtag, so you could see the hashtag there. It's don't suck. So if you tweet anything out, feel free to use that, as well as the ASW15 hashtag. So the first story that we want to go over is related to Sneakers, which is a restaurant, I believe, in Vermont. And they had a sign that they put up, you can see it there, where it says yield for Sneakers bacon. And after they put that sign up, they received a couple of complaints about the sign being offensive, that they're vegans and they feel the bacon sign is offensive. So as a result, they started getting very negative posts on their Facebook page, and ultimately they took down their Facebook page. So what would you guys have done in that case? Do you think taking down the Facebook page was the right move?
So I don't. Also, Sneakers is about a half mile from my house. Okay. So I was kind of front and center for this whole thing. I think, so they shut off their phone and their Facebook page, and I think that the phone might be one thing because they couldn't take orders, but the Facebook page, Facebook just built an automated page and to fill the gap for when people were searching for sneakers. So instead of being able to control the conversation that was happening about this problem, they kind of lost control of it to just a generic Facebook page. And so instead of having a bunch of negative comments that they could kind of address and control on their own page, they had a bunch of negative comments that were out of control on just kind of a generic Facebook page. Interestingly, that Facebook page's avatar is a bunch of bacon too. I think that somebody got to having some fun there.
Yeah, I'd say the big issue is not to try to avoid the controversy, because the controversy will exist. Keep the page active and just address it. And I believe they responded. What was the comment? They said, we're about breakfast, not politics?
Yeah, one of their first comments was, we're about breakfast, not politics here.
Yeah, so
all caps.
That's really the way to address it is, don't avoid the issue completely. Just be genuine, go out there, state your side of the case, which they should have, and they somewhat did, and just try to control the conversation that way. Recognize that it is a little bit ridiculous, people arguing over whether or not a sign that's referred to bacon is up, and they had to take a Facebook page down for that.
Well, the original complainer brought up that they were a Muslim family,
Yes.
so that incited some discourse with people, and so they deleted the page. But what they did not realize is that the profile was still there, so people were still able to go on and submit reviews And then people submitted like the bacon picture for their profile picture.
Yeah.
So now their website still has 4 social links at the bottom for Twitter and Instagram, and none of them have been active for years now, and they should just erase them if they're not going to do anything.
Have any of you all out there had an experience like
There's a
this?
guy here.
And you?
Sorry, I just have a question. So it's a restaurant that advertised. Go to the mic, please. Go to the mic.
You were supposed to say that.
Well, we were going to repeat it.
The problem is that they were advertising that they had bacon. Is
Because it
that
said bacon. The original complainer was on a forum and mentioned that they were vegan. This is in a community space. They said it was unsafe because
I guess,
Yeah, so the sign wasn't actually in the restaurant. It was in a public community
Yes.
triangle, right?
yeah, so this is in a town called Winooski, and there's a big roundabout in the center of town with a bunch of restaurants around it and stuff like that, and there's this community garden in the middle of the roundabout, and each restaurant gets to curate the garden in front of, in front of their restaurant. And so this sign was up in their part of the garden. And so as people kind of walked around, that it was there for any pedestrians to kind of see. And so it was, like part advertisement, part humor, whatever it was.
Yeah. Okay.
And in my view, they finally did the right thing by just shutting up. They shouldn't have deleted all their profiles or just went inactive, but shutting up a lot of times is the answer. Sometimes you just need to let things die and play out, and it will go away. Because there's nothing you can do to address people being upset about you doing something because somebody was a Muslim and complained about it. If you put it back up, then it's just going to cause a storm from the other side of the issue. Just make food and shut up. And they're all recovered. All those reviews now are 4 stars or better, and people are still going there, if not more people, because of the controversy.
Okay. So the next story that we have here is a company, a clothing company, I believe, that's it's called Hawk & Company, and one of their customers placed an order, and that order was canceled, and as many of us do, he put a tweet where he complained saying that his order was canceled and they wouldn't honor the discount, and that he doesn't recommend them. And their response was that we're sure your 320 followers will understand. So as you can see, their response wasn't really the most appropriate. What do you guys think of the initial response that Hawk & Company did?
I think that in general, it's unless it's part of your brand, being snarky with your customers is probably not the best first contact to have with them. There's some notable exceptions to that. Like one of the things we were looking at when we were building this presentation was like Cards Against Humanity, right? Everybody knows that game. Those people are snarky, and so having that kind of a rapport with your customers is okay, but not for a well-known, nice clothing brand. And that's easily preventable by just not being a dick in general to your customers.
Yeah, never belittle your customers. That's a general rule that you should abide by. And that this probably comes because somebody's nephew needed a job, or they had an intern that just had no clue, takes everything personally. And then their follow-up tweet had a hashtag entitled on it because he complained. And the funny thing is that somebody ran an audit of Hawk & Company's followers, and 90% of them were fake profiles. So they actually had less followers, legitimate followers, than the guy that they were trying to belittle.
Yeah, one of the things here that I think this leads to is the preventing negative customer feedback piece. First off, make sure that you have a structure in place for your social media handling. A lot of companies just give it to an intern or give it to some kid fresh out of college with no real structure, and so you get these personalities coming through in their social media. You don't want to do that. You want to have a structure in place. How do we address customer issues? How do we address complaints? What are the processes that we follow, and how do we respond? What's our attitude? A tweet like this, sure, maybe the guy only had a couple hundred followers, but now this went viral across the internet, and that's going to do huge damage to your brand. So you need to make sure that you have a structure in place and don't just leave things out there for just anybody to make a decision on how to respond to your customers.
So, right, as Sean mentioned, this did go viral, and you could see a tweet from the executive producer of The Big Bang Theory, seeing that and now retweeting it. So, what are your thoughts? Now, what should Hawk & Company do now that this big, Bill Prady retweets this out?
Well, they should do what they should have done to start with. I mean, you don't know who those 320 people are that follow this person, and eventually, if you are a big enough ass, people will find it and share it. So if you make a mistake, somebody in charge needs to be monitoring what's going on and what conversations that their interns or whoever's running this social is in charge of, and put an end to it. And then once you do, you own it. Okay, we did this. We were wrong. Sorry. DM us. We want a second chance at making this right. Take the conversation away from the public forum, so that you can get into what the real issues are and deal with that one person, because your problem is with that one person. It wasn't with everybody else. If you make them satisfied, they will go back to their profile and say, oh, Hawk & Company did a great job. They made everything better.
Yeah, and if you, the excellent point made here is take that conversation offline. Do not try to resolve a complaint or an issue like that across social media in a public forum. Send the comment, DM me like Nate said, ask for a phone number, ask for an email address. Get that conversation offline so that you can then show that, hey, we're trying. We're asking to resolve this. We want to talk with you personally. So people in the public forum see that you're trying to address the issue, yet they're not seeing the back and forth, because you also don't know who you're dealing with. Maybe the person is just trolling you. Maybe the person is just crazy. You don't want to hash that out in a public forum. You want to really bring it all offline.
I think it's kind of important to the initial damage has already been done, and so I think it's important to publicly apologize for that.
Yeah.
And don't necessarily place blame or anything. Be vague about it. Make sure that people know that the wrong course of action was taken there and that you're going to fix it. But then move it offline, but then also kind of go through and do a root cause analysis. Find out why that happened. If you have a large social media team, it means tracking down the person that did it, but also making sure that there's a system in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. There's a lot of tools out there that allow interns to put tweets up kind of provisionally, and then have managers come through and approve them.
Yeah.
And something simple like that could keep those kind of problems from happening. And then, pull it over to a DM or into whatever your ticketing system is, your email, whatever it is, and get that person addressed. And then incentivize them to kind of become an advocate for you again at some point. Retweeting or just making an initial tweet saying that you're happy and that everybody should shop there or something like that.
Okay, now going back to the prior slide, Hawk & Company also tweeted out that some press is better than no press. What do you guys feel? Do you think that some press is better than nothing, or is bad press, still good?
I think sometimes that can be the case. I think that in their case, they could have turned this around. They still did a terrible job, because now they're trying to play it off as if this was on purpose rather than apologizing for a bad tweet. The social experiment is going better than expected, as if they intended to be rude to a customer just to see what would happen. And that's just a ridiculous statement. Like JT said, they should have owned up to it, apologized. Then their some press is better than no press definitely could have applied. Here, they're just making it worse.
I'm a fairly firm believer that all press is good, even in the case of negative stuff. Because if you try to become a part of that conversation, you can manipulate that conversation to your advantage, almost no matter what. Being involved with the software world, the most common thing that I see are like hacks, right? Like Sony and Xbox got DDoS and hacked this Christmas and stuff like that. I think that those are the only really damaging press things, because those are really well-known brands, but kind of in the vein of the people that are at least at this conference, we're not Amazon or Sony or any of those people. So, getting into the national spotlight is probably good in general. Just make sure that when you get there that you own whatever got you there if it's negative, and try not to be a dick.
Yeah. Address the feedback appropriately.
So after this entire debacle around the complaints and all of those type of things, they sent out an apology to everyone on Twitter saying they'd like to extend a 70% off everything in their store using that coupon code. Do you think that was the right move?
I think that it's it's the right move if it's fiscally responsible. I don't know internally what their sales look like. 70% off sounds pretty ambitious. For
Yeah,
all
I'm
things.
pretty sure this was actually fake. Like,
Yeah.
it was their attempt at horrible humor.
Yeah. So I probably would never do that. I think that, and you don't need to really bribe people to like you. I think that if you just put your name on something and apologize, that's good enough.
Exactly. Apologize, move on. Start talking about something else, let it die. You're just keeping it alive. Every day we're going to send out an apology, and then we're going to send out this coupon code apology. It's like you're just going to incite people.
So before I move on to the next story, does anyone here in the audience have something they'd like to bring up that would like the panel to talk about? Okay, can you please go to the microphone?
Hey guys. So I'm with Rich Dad Education, and we have some posts on our Facebook page that people post that, you know, it's not a legitimate complaint necessarily. It gets malicious or, you know, rude to a certain extent, right? Mm-hmm. So we have, you know, free financial workshops around the country, and we sell products at these free financial workshops. That's how we offer them for free. But sometimes people will be like rude about it, like, you know, say kind of hurtful things. And I'm wondering, how do you, first off, at what point do you say, you know, I'm not going to answer that? So when do you answer versus when do you delete it because it's rude or malicious? And then also, if it is rude or malicious and you are going to answer it, how do you answer it?
Sure.
So, that kind of thing.
I think a good rule of thumb, and it's such a fine line, it's really hard to know where you have an actual unhappy customer versus somebody who's just screwing with you, crazy, trolling you, whatever it might be. One good rule of thumb is following Facebook terms of service. So if somebody is swearing on your page or really being aggressively rude and harmful, that would be a case where you could potentially delete. I am of the personal belief that you pretty much never delete a comment or a post on your page. That can spiral into getting more and more things that you just can't keep up with. The better thing to do is to respond to the issue and try to address it. Similarly, you can say, you know, we'd like to discuss this with you offline and find out what it is that caused you to feel this way. Do you have any, I don't imagine you might, but do you have any specific examples that maybe we can try to give some feedback or help? Sorry to make you walk so much.
No,
You should have
no
one of
worries.
those walking
Good exercise,
pedometers.
good cardio.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't sure how in depth that you would want me to go. Okay, so at a free preview event, someone purchases, at the end, they have the option to purchase a 3-day training, okay? At that 3-day training, they'll learn all sorts of types of real estate or stock market investing, depending on the kind of 3-day training it is, right? We offer elite courses on certain topics. So if you want, you can take 3 days all on wholesale investing or all on options, right? So we offer these during the 3-day training. And someone has a problem, let's say, for example, that we're selling too much at a training that they paid for.
Okay.
Right? So they immediately, you know, start posting offensive things. So let's say an example post would be, you know, your 3-day training, all you do is sell the whole time, and they use offensive words. Let's say scam or something like that, right? And, you know, we offer legitimately 3 days worth of training on real estate investing, but some of these people expect that they're going to come out of that 3 days with, you know, a master's degree in real estate investing or something,
Right.
you know, like, so they expect to be a master of something in 3 days. Unrealistic expectations. That's kind of like an example.
Right, so I definitely think that would be one you respond to. You know, they're using the word scam, which is hurtful to you, but it's likely their true belief that this is scamming, not that it is. So the best thing to do would be address that and explain to them why. And this potentially you do want to do in a public forum so that you can kind of show the information and address that scam issue. The big thing here, and this would go for everybody, is before you respond, make sure you have all of your facts, all of your information possible. So find out exactly what course that person attended if you can. Find out how the presenter, what they went through, how much of the time was talking about other courses that they could purchase versus actual coursework. So if you can say, you know, well, we've reviewed the course you attended and, you know, only 2% of the entire time was spent discussing other options, and we had plenty of, well, I probably actually wouldn't refer to people that purchase, but say, you know, this is the actual breakdown, you know, plenty of people coming out of the course, this is the amount of information that you've received. Address it that way. And then towards the end of that, ask them to contact you offline or ask for their email address or something like that, and then follow up with the person offline. If you can turn that situation around and perhaps, you know, refund the money or address their concern however you might offline normally, that person would hopefully go back and re-edit their post as well. So that would be the best way, I think.
Another option is if they're being profane or being personally or saying things derogatory about you personally, then you can delete them, but it's something that I do a lot is hiding. You can hide comments so that it still looks to the person that left the comment that it's there. They can still see it, their friends can still see it, but the general public cannot see it. But if it's a real thing that's about your business, then you have to really be mindful that you're not putting any emotion into it.
Yeah,
you're using
definitely.
facts. I know you own the business, so it's going to feel like it's a personal attack to you, but these are legitimate questions that your target audience is going to have, and it would be good to have, you know, the answer to those questions.
I think, so I guess I think a lot of things about this. First, it's good to have a policy on your page about things people aren't allowed to talk about or say. You aren't allowed to swear. It'll come up later. We're going to talk about Play-Doh.
Play-Doh.
You know, if you have a child-centric Facebook page, you can't talk about adult themes, you know, those kind of things. You know, you may want to include talking about whether or not the course is a scam, kind of in the, you know, the rules of the road or whatever. So I think that's the first step. And then anybody that violates that, delete their comment. And then if people ask you why you're deleting comments, you can point directly to, you know, kind of the rules.
Yeah, I would say like code of conduct rather than a policy, because then.
Yeah.
I mean, Facebook sets the policies for their pages, so, or whatever form it is. But if you have like rules of conduct, then people know ahead of time what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And so then the other thing is to really focus on what they said and make sure that you're doing everything in your power to make sure that what they said isn't true. And so and what I mean by that is kind of like kill them with caring. You know, make sure that you're going back through your courses and stuff and making sure that you know, they're not overly salesy, letting them know that you value their opinion and that you're going to go back and look at that, right? And do that publicly, and then try to take the conversation offline. You know, try to spin them around. You know, if they thought it was too salesy, maybe give them a refund, and then really engage them offline to see how you can make it better.
Now, are there certain posts that would be better left just leaving there and not responding to versus responding to?
I like to respond to everything unless I'm going to delete it, and I don't like deleting things either. Most of the pages I run have a pretty open policy. You know, there aren't like kids sites or anything like that, and so if somebody's being an asshole on the page, then we'll address that kind of short and succinctly. I'll usually give every comment at least one hit, and then I'll stop the conversation there. And I try to make sure that comment says, you know, thanks for your advice, blah, blah, whatever. And generally people don't even respond after that most of the time. So.
Yeah, I don't think you have to, you don't have to type a response to every single comment. You just have to give them signals that you've read what's happening. So sometimes you just click like. If somebody says, oh, I really like the class. So, I have pages that are really active, and if I typed a response for every single thing that was there, it'd be my entire day. So I'll just click like. If they make a comment on a post, I click like on it. It doesn't matter really what it is, just to indicate that I've read it.
Nice.
Works. Too bad.
If it's okay to ask a quick follow-up, do you guys have a triage system or something that you advocate in terms of, like you were saying, legitimizing and then identifying a process and then going a specific route? Do you have like a triage process that you know of that you advocate?
I'm looking right at Bhavik because he's a Six Sigma guy.
Yeah, I was
That's a
going to
good
actually
point, yeah.
jump in with an answer,
Well, there you go.
but I was
Go for it,
looking
homie.
to you guys first before I jumped in.
Go for it.
Talk
So,
about that.
one thing that I always recommend to groups that I work with is to take all of the data and Pareto them by category. So, taking a look at the data and saying what types of things are similar between all of them. And then there's a chart that's called the Pareto chart where it basically aggregates them and then ranks them in order by quantity. And in a true Pareto chart fashion, you'll see very quickly that 80% of the comments fall into one or two buckets, and those are the buckets that you're going to go in and really drill down and dig into. A lot of times we won't be able to address each and every single comment and each and every negative feedback, in a strong level of detail. But if we start seeing trends of data, then you want to then do something more systemic for those top two categories that are really driving all of the negative feedback. Okay.
Pew, pew. That was you.
That's my Twitter notification. It's a bird tweeting. Thank you, whoever tweeted about the session.
And then after you figure out what those top categories are, I always like using root cause analysis tools to really drill down to what's the root cause. Many of the times that we're looking at data, we see symptoms. So people complaining, saying this is a scam, or people complaining that, I'm dissatisfied with the service. Those are more of the symptoms, but trying to understand really what's the underlying cause of the issue. You may find out that your processes need some improvement or need some work. So I always utilize tools like the Apollo method or the fault tree method, which those two things you can Google and find out a lot more about. But it's really just figuring out what is causing each of those things. So, what caused this? And then you get to an answer, then you say what caused that, and you drill down until you reach something that is systemically fixable. And that's something I typically recommend to all of the groups that I work with on process improvement.
Yeah, to build on that as well, aside from the process improvement aspect and drilling down to the root causes, make sure that you have a communication system set up within your organization for all the relevant players that you need to bring involved. And beyond just, I have people's phone numbers, you want to have, there are tons of tools out there you can use, WhatsApp or Slack, HipChat is another one. These kind of multi-messaging systems that you can access in a group format every one of the relevant players, so that if you have that post pop up on your page or your Twitter, whoever is handling your social media doesn't need to wait 24 hours to get responses from everybody over email and a whole conversation going. You want to be able to immediately access relevant players and get all of the relevant information. So make sure you have a good messaging system in place.
Okay. So another example, many of you might have heard about this one during the Christmas time. So Play-Doh came out with, how do you describe this?
This is an extruder.
Yes.
They came out with an extruder, and the shape of it has caused an uproar with some parents and some families. And people started complaining or being offended on the Facebook page, posting pictures of the tools, and
He said tools.
and those posts of the pictures were quickly getting deleted by Play-Doh. What do you guys think of the deleting of the pictures? Is that the right thing that Play-Doh should have done?
I think I jumped the gun a little bit earlier when I was talking about this, but this comes back to that policy thing, right? This Play-Doh's Facebook page is kind of meant for kids. And so I think deleting the pictures is a good idea because, that would be against that policy if it exists.
So the one, it depends on how the photo is presented, because somebody posting a photo of your product and then you deleting it because you think it's inappropriate for kids is probably the wrong.
Yeah.
But if they're posting, because I just want to clarify.
Some people
for
were
everybody
sticking
there.
it out of their zipper. And
That's the
posting
post
that
that needs
picture,
to be
so-
deleted.
Anything inappropriate should be deleted, is, I guess, the way to present that. I think that Plato did a good job, though. They came out with a statement, and they shut up to kind of follow what Nate was saying earlier. But it's important to still manage kind of the immature people that were just posting stupid things on their page, to kind of protect any kids that would have come through that way. And I think that's a pretty black and white situation for them.
Right. There was a lot less tempers, like emotion involved than it was with the bacon thing, because that was, religion was brought into it and America and all that good stuff. So that's really difficult for a cafe to deal with. But Play-Doh, it's their product. It looks like a regular extruder tool that you would use to decorate cakes. That's what it's supposed to be. But obviously some parents had issue with it. No child that's 4 years old is going to come up and say, hey, this looks like... Anyway.
Well, and something interesting to note is, and I'm not sure, it's hard to track back these things where they started, but I don't even think it was parents who pointed it out originally. I remember it came across Reddit before any of this happened.
It was just
So it was just
people.
immature, or
Wasn't any children.
it was more of a funny thing that somebody posted. Somebody else decided to bombard the Play-Doh page, and then it started this controversy.
But Play-Doh's following exploded.
Yeah.
They started getting a bunch of new likes, and they never addressed anybody's exact posts, but they started not deleting them, and then they just put this response out. We got some feedback. We're changing the design of the tool. If you want a new one, call this number. The end. And then they went back to business as normal.
Yep.
2 days later, everybody forgot about it.
Yeah.
I think that this story is a really good example of having a good process or a good process improvement. They were doing it a little wrong in the beginning, and they realized that they were doing it wrong. They probably consulted some outside social media people, or kind of reorganized their team, or started approving things before interns were doing stuff, whatever it was. But then they reacted really well, and then they crafted a message, and then they were able to shut it down really well. So I think this is one of the success stories of kind of this deck.
Did you say deck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's Vegas?
Ridiculous.
Okay, another thing that it has really kind of impressed me a lot, I tend to travel very frequently, and I've started noticing airlines have really gotten on top of using Twitter and other social media elements to address customer feedback real time. Typically when we're traveling on an airline, we're really upset at the time when something doesn't go as planned, and airlines really have a short window of opportunity to react to that, because once I'm on the plane or at my destination, then I'm not really going to be thinking about that in the future. So I've noticed now a lot of airlines have started really reacting quickly to social media posts. As you can see, here are a couple examples, and I know they're of me, but I was struggling once to get some credit for some mileage with Alaska Airlines, and I'd called the phone number a few times, really got no response. I posted on Twitter, and then within minutes, the social media team, they said, email us the details, and they resolved it within an hour or two. What do you guys think of that? Do you think that airlines are doing better than other companies related to social media?
I think so, and I think airlines are kind of a notoriously shitty place to do business, and so they really have embraced social media. I think this is an interesting thing from the consumer's perspective, not so much the merchant. The organizational structure of social media teams are kind of under like the CMO's branch, right? It's under marketing and sales, and traditionally customer service is handled by the operations branch, and customer service is just way overloaded by all of the people in the world that are calling in or emailing or whatever it is, starting tickets. And social media being a relatively new thing in the last 10 or 15 years or whatever, it isn't as a popular way for people to communicate, and I think that they can be a lot more agile because there's not a whole lot of volume going through there relative to things like customer service. I think that in the next 5 years, social media, especially for large companies like airlines, is going to get just as crowded as customer service, but right now it's a really big win for consumers. I think it's a little bit more stressful from the merchant side.
I disagree a little bit on that, just the last part. I think having it in a public forum makes it so that they have to respond. So even if they move the conversation offline afterwards, they know that if they mess up, you're going to be right back out there.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I'm good.
So diplomatic.
Do we have the JetBlue thing up there too?
No, we don't have JetBlue.
So I'll give you another example of sort of, I guess, just good social media, but on the cusp of preventing negative feedback. JetBlue does a phenomenal job of not just responding to customer complaints and feedback, but they keep an eye out of whenever people are just talking about traveling, and they'll proactively tweet somebody who happens to be talking about a flight at another airline or visiting a destination. And just the fact that their social media team is so proactive in getting out there and communicating with people, whether or not they're customers, the perspective of JetBlue as an entity on social is positive. So people are much less likely to bitch to them the same way they might to Delta or another airline that people have negative feelings for to start with. So, and I'm big on this whole prevent the negative feedback. Get a good relationship with your fan base and with people that are interacting with you, and they're not going to be as quick to complain about something in the public forum without letting you address it first. So really, a really big important thing is get that good reputation that you're proactively addressing needs.
Right, and that can just come through being active. If a user sees that you're actively monitoring your profiles, then they will civilly bring that issue to you rather than going off, because people act totally different online than they do in real life. They would never speak to people the way they type. And 9 times out of 10, if you respond professionally with a cool head without getting emotional, they will back right down. They don't really expect you to answer them. Yeah. And when you do, they're just blown away, and then they're, oh, I'm sorry, okay, thank you. Happens all the time.
All the time.
Okay. Now, some companies, such as there are a couple of airlines that only do this from like business hours, like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Is that the right way to approach this,
No.
or?
If that's the only time they fly.
Yeah, exactly. If they're flying 24/7, they could pay a social media team 24/7.
Right.
Yeah, you have to be there when your customers are there. You don't want to let something sit for 12 hours just because it's not in business hours. If you need to have a skeleton staff or deal with different time zones or outsource to somewhere else, just to even notify you. You can set up different alarms. You can use, let's say if you have a small team, for you guys out here, if you're maybe a business owner that doesn't have a full team to address all these issues, you can set up tools, there's If This Then That or Zapier, ifttt.com, where you can set up rules that say, let's say somebody tweets about you or tweets to you, have it push to an alarm on your phone so that maybe it's 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, you can still address that even though you may not be quote unquote working. Or paying attention. So make sure that you understand, at least know that this issue came up, so you can then start the ball rolling to address it however you need and get your facts together.
I think in a similar vein to that, I think it's important to let people know that you recognize that there's something going on, but there may not necessarily be somebody at the wheel to handle their problem right now, but you'll handle it as soon as you possibly can. Like my autoresponder on my email right now, says that I'm paying attention to my email, but I might be slow to respond because I'm drunk and distracted. And so people recognize that, and they're kind of aware of that. But I'm still getting back to people in 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. And it's just like an email autoresponder. Like if your business hours are 9 to 5 and somebody hits you up at 6 p.m., let them know, hey, there's nobody in the office right now, but we really want to help you with your problem. If one of our senior management notices this, we'll deal with it right away. Otherwise, we'll get right back to you at 9 a.m.
Okay. Now, how would you handle customers that consistently always are complaining? So here's a couple examples of people consistently complaining very frequently. What would you do with those kind of customers?
Okay, so this one came up. I saw it come through on marketing's page. I don't know if you follow it, Scott Stratton. He's got a lot of great stuff. But sometimes I think that they miss things. So they posted that this was something that was horrible that American Airlines had done. Somebody was complaining on Twitter about being seated separately from their toddler. And they only snipped out two tweets, and one was, hey, I'm going to be seated away from my toddler, and then the American Airlines tweet saying, oh, an agent will work with you directly at the gate to try their best, or something like that. And they were just thinking that was just a ridiculous thing to say. But if you dig back into the conversation, they asked 4 times for this person to DM their travel information so that they could change it right away before getting to the airport. The person refused multiple times. There's only so much you can do. And when you go through this person's history, everything they tweet about is a complaint to a business, nothing else. So sometimes you just have to put it out there, we're going to do our best, and then let that person talk to themselves. That's my advice anyway.
I think this comes back to kind of what we were talking about with this guy over here, there are people that are just going to be negative, and one of the things that should be a factor in whether or not you decide to respond to them is they're on social media. Everything that they do is public, just like everything you do is public. You can go back and you can spy on them, and if they're just a chronic complainer and that's all they do, then maybe you shouldn't give them the time of day. And there are lots of people like that.
And recognize the difference between platforms too. If something's posted on your Facebook page, that'll sit around. I mean, your Facebook page is not static, but posts stay if somebody comes visit your page. Twitter, on the other hand, if somebody tweets about you, it's an instantaneous moment. It'll disappear pretty quickly. So if you're going to potentially ignore people, recognize which platform you're on. If they're just a constant complainer, it's on Twitter, chances are nobody will see it. If they do follow up, then maybe respond at that point. But sometimes you can just kind of let things go.
You really need to proofread how you word things, though, because everybody was stuck on the "we'll try our best." Okay, well,
Yeah.
it's not that crazy that you could be seated in different seats if you don't get the book your seat selection when you book your tickets. But 99.9 repeating % of the time, nobody is going to want to sit next to your unsupervised toddler. They will gladly switch seats with you.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to get all bent out of shape about it, and American Air probably should just let this one lie.
Okay. Before we go on to the next story, does anyone else have any customer complaints or things they want to bring up to have our panel talk about?
Or questions on anything we've said so far?
This is about you guys.
We're so concise. They understand us perfectly. No questions. This is great.
That means we get 10s on the reviews.
10s, reviews, 10s.
Yes. Okay, so the next story is around Amy's Baking Company, and Amy's Baking Company is a restaurant that's located in Arizona, and you might remember it from the show Kitchen Nightmares, the one with Gordon Ramsay. I don't know if any of you watched that show, but back in 2010, they got a bad Yelp review, and then after the show, they were also getting a lot of negative responses on their Facebook and Yelp pages. And as you can see from the responses here, they were very hostile and negative to the responders, writing in all caps. What do you think of writing in all caps?
I just want to jump in because I love this case study. They are insane. Please Google this if you're not already familiar with this later. Look it up. It's a great story. It's so much fun to watch. The Kitchen Nightmares episode was phenomenal. The woman running this company, basically, she went on Kitchen Nightmares because she thought she would prove how awesome she was, not because she felt like they needed any help. And she refused to accept any feedback from Gordon Ramsay. Why
would you?
Why would you? He doesn't know what he's talking about. She obviously knows exactly what she's talking about. And this went viral because somebody posted it on Reddit and posted a link to their Facebook page, and then people started commenting on their Facebook page and going back through their history. The negative review that they had on Yelp in 2010, the feedback, the comments you see up here very similarly is it's how she responded to the Yelp review. So it was a blogger that went to the restaurant and gave some negative feedback. And instead of trying to address that and say, well, we hear your concerns, this is how we're remedying it, she basically called the guy a loser, said he was sitting alone because he had no friends, he must not know what good pizza tastes like, and must not be able to recognize fresh ingredients, and just reamed him. You should not respond to your customers in that way. People went off on her and posted to her Facebook page, and you can see the cap. She's yelling. She's yelling and calling people losers on her Facebook page. This is her personality, her brand. This is just, she's now known as the crazy lady with the baking company. Don't do that.
I think that, so the moral of the story is don't be crazy.
Don't be crazy.
Don't be crazy, don't be a dick.
But I like to look at the silver lining.
Oh my God.
You should act the same on your Facebook page as you do in real life. And she does.
That's a good point. All right. People know what they're getting into. So.
I know, but then she's lying a lot, though.
She's lying
Somebody
all the
hacked our pages and wrote all that. I would never say this,
She's
and
great.
then
Great.
start swearing at the people again in the comments after that. So.
Yeah, the big lesson here, don't be crazy. I think I agree with JT on that one. And then they hired a PR agency to try to fix the issue, and that's when they started claiming that they got hacked.
You can't fake stupid.
So lesson learned is what it truly is be cordial. Recognize that even though social media is casual, you should not be casual on social media. It's your brand. Be professional, understand your customers, try to respond and address issues. Do not be rude to them. Do not call them names, because it's just going to be the downfall of your organization.
It might just speed up the downfall of a crappy business.
Yeah.
Because if this is how you treat your customers, obviously, then social media is just going to amplify that.
I want to hijack Bhavik's moderating and
Moderating.
ask you guys, what you think about like shutting down a page like this. Like, would that be a good move?
Shutting down a page?
Yeah, like.
I still wouldn't shut down the page. First off, she's getting a ridiculous amount of traffic. So
Right.
the whole no press is bad press.
Yeah.
You can turn this around. So they could turn this around if they'd actually approached it properly. If she had come out and apologized, or better yet, if her husband or somebody else involved with the organization had come out and apologized, and you can write it off to she got very emotional, she takes her baking very seriously, and it upsets her greatly, and try to address it from that perspective. Apologize to the public, apologize to the people, maybe try to reach out to certain people individually and communicate with them. You can turn this type of thing around. I would
Right.
definitely not shut down the page.
Well, the gasoline on the fire was when they were admitting to stealing their servers' tips.
Yes.
So apologizing for that, but you know what? Being crazy can be your brand. So if you're going to be that way, just be that way. It will definitely get you a lot of Facebook traffic, website traffic. All your social channels will be hot all the time, but you can't.
Do you think
you can't
own it?
take that personally.
You think own it and just
do
that's
it.
your brand.
That's
actually
you.
could
If
work.
that's you, do it.
I was
There's
wondering.
no rules. There's no rules to any social media. There's best
Yeah.
practices, and okay, be prepared for this to happen if you're going to act this way or if you're going to treat situations like this. But as long as you're prepared for the consequences, it's yours.
There's a possibility
Do
that
what
she
works.
drove like more business in her restaurant. There's
Well,
no way for us to really know.
Right, like we're talking about it right now. I'm pretty sure this is the kind of the most famous screw up.
Meltdown. It was a meltdown.
Yeah, whatever. And in social media history. So like this has been talked about by hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions. I don't know.
Yeah. I got to admit, I'm kind of inclined to visit that place if I ever go to Scottsdale. So I guess
kinda
it's
like
working.
Well, then there was a video of a patron came in and was saying things to them, and the husband got out and chased him around with a knife. It's on YouTube. It's crazy. But then he said it was a pen afterwards. But they slowed it down. That was a knife. And she's screaming. She sounded just like these comments. So I say own it. You might get stabbed, but these pies are pretty good.
Yeah, right. Great reviews.
We should have a class trip. We should all go right now.
Let's go. We can get there. It's not a long drive.
Okay, so we have just about 5 minutes left in our scheduled time, so I want to open it up for questions from all of you. Any questions on any of the advice given by the panelists, or any questions you may have for them? I'd like to open it up to you guys.
I have a question.
Okay.
Does anybody know the score of the Green Bay Seahawks game?
It was 13-0.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
I think it's worse though. Okay,
16-0.
Oh,
Yeah, 16-0.
The plus 8.5 is looking pretty good.
Did anybody come expecting the streaming? Just curious. I don't know if anybody saw that.
No.
tweet.
We were gonna
All
do
right, so we
that.
don't feel badly. I give a question for all you guys, actually. Do you have other cases we haven't talked about? Do you know of any great social media disaster, meltdown, review, Yelp, Foursquare, anything? Or what drove you to come here?
are you sleeping?
Nobody's awake. Hello.
Oh, I just got a text message from my wife. She gave me.
There we go.
Off topic from the company I'm here with, but I sit on the board for a local nonprofit based out of Austin, Texas, and we had noticed that there became a witch hunt for a similar nonprofit based on just an acronym they used in Washington, D.C. And we had to make the decision whether we try to take advantage of that, leverage this witch hunt to win essentially donors over from this nonprofit to our nonprofit, or whether we should just stay quiet. Ultimately, we decided to stay quiet. I felt like we were playing with fire. But I'm curious if you've seen an example of where someone has a social media meltdown and another player comes in and uses that to their advantage.
I don't have an example necessarily in terms of a meltdown. I think in general it's kind of a good idea to stay away from that kind of stuff. You don't want to get sucked into the fire. But so Obama recently did a speech about net neutrality and broadband, and the hashtag for that was trending on Twitter was better broadband. And a customer of mine owned betterbroadband.com. So we jumped on that. We redirected betterbroadband.com to their website, and we threw together a whole bunch of really quick social media stuff to kind of jump on that. And, interestingly, so Better Broadband's a generic term, so it's not somebody's brand, and they are in the broadband industry. So, it was kind of relevant, but it's good to really take advantage of those kind of things. But that was a positive thing. I would try to stay away from negative things unless you're very impassioned on one side or the other, and even then, it's probably still a bad idea.
I think it also depends a little bit on the specifics of the situation. So the similarly acronymed organization, did you have anything to do with like the same topic?
So it was the same topic. They had tried to create a new acronym, and it was actually military brats. It's a pretty common phrase, military brats. This nonprofit had tried to change the word brats to champs, and it was like children, heroes attached to military personnel. And the military brat community got really up in arms, the grown adults up in arms that this nonprofit were to try to change such an acronym. We don't actually have a preference on the acronym. We don't go one way or the other, but we thought we might have the opportunity, and a lot of them started bleeding over to us and giving us support that we didn't ask for. And so the question at that point was, do we really embrace the brat phrase, or do we just stay out of it?
You can piggyback that. I'm sorry.
No, go.
You can piggyback that and leverage it, kind of set the table for a debate without choosing a side. So it'll kind of bring some attention to your organization, and a conversation will take place, and just let it happen. Don't feel like you have to officiate it or moderate that, though.
Yeah. And you can also leverage the press without picking sides. It's sort of a good opportunity to maybe put out a release of, you could say the differences between your organizations, or, specify, say we've been getting a lot of attention because, of this issue right now. Here is how we address, the issues at hand, but not like the actual issues that you're addressing, not the acronym situation. So kind of like a one-sentence starter of, hey, a lot of people have been bringing us up and talking to us because of this. Here is where we stand. So you're kind of not really addressing the acronym thing. You're just more talking about what you do, but you're still leveraging that ability. Sure. Or that difference. Now, on the other hand, if you think that there is a disparity, if you disagree with their approach, so I'm very active in the social entrepreneurship space. I ran a social impact startup, so I'm very familiar with how nonprofits and all that work. One organization that I supported greatly is a breast cancer organization that spends all their money on research, and they kind of hate what Susan G. Komen for The Cure does. So they actively speak against what Strategic Coleman does. So if that were to happen, they would hop right on that and say, yeah, we disagree with what Coleman is doing, and here is how we're different, and they would totally leverage it. If you don't have that relationship, then don't address what they're doing. Just talk about the positives about your organization.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I'm pretty sure we're straight up out of time. If you guys have any questions, just come up afterwards and ask us.
Did you just moderate again?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm used to being the moderator.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. Okay. We'll be up here for the next few minutes. Yep.
Don't forget
you,
to
Bhavik.
fill out your reviews and mark 10s and say Sean Steinmarc was awesome.